Guilliman totally nerfed the Space Marines, and it has kind of flown under the radar in the community. The 13th Primarch pulled a lot of genius political moves in the wake of the Horus Heresy. As we see in Ashes of the Imperium, he pulls power moves on a level that leaves even his fellow Primarchs stunned and unable to react. Truly the master of intrigue and politics, Guilliman positioned himself and his legion to be in charge. And when I say in charge, I mean of everything. Of food, of water, of jobs, shelter, sex toys, of recreating Terra. It was all done through and dependent on the Ultramarines and their Primarch, Roboute Guilliman. And while there's a lot of lore going on in Ashes of the Imperium, it gets absolutely insane. Some of the deepest and most meaningful Warhammer lore Games Workshop has given us in years. There's also something that is mostly getting overlooked, and it is something that will set Guilliman and the Ultramarines apart from the other legions and their Primarchs. A subtle, and in my opinion egregious, way of solidifying his power going forward and his dominion over the Imperium and his brothers. Awesome if you're a fan of the Ultramarines, but for everyone else, it's a kick in the nuts after a stab in the back, in so many ways. But the physical representation of Microsoft Excel had to do what he had to do, at least from his own very myopic perspective. So, it was kind of like when something non-related gets slipped into a bill and Congress passes it and it becomes law. Guilliman completely nerfed the Space Marines, and it seems like it was written into the new Lex Imperialis. As he and the High Lords tore apart everything Dorn and the other heroes of Terra fought so hard to protect. And no, by nerfed, I don't mean that he just busted the legions up and made them adhere to the Codex Astartes. It isn't that they were reduced chapters of small precision strike forces and are no longer huge, galaxy-threatening, capable armies under the control of solitary figures with the wills and egos of gods. Guilliman actually diminishes the Astartes themselves on a genetic level. He issues the order that they are to be reduced, nerfed, that they basically get scaled back and turned into something lesser than they were. The Space Marines of the current Warhammer 40k timeline, it is often said, are not the equals of their Great Crusade and Horus Heresy era counterparts. And we see here, right after the Heresy, they're derived from the same gene seed, sure, but it's much like making a cocktail into a non-alcoholic version. It just doesn't have the same kick. Or maybe it's more like replacing whiskey with a wine cooler or something. They are still Space Marines after all. Why would the Primarch of the Toilet Smurfs, or Ultramarines, do such a thing? Well, for one thing, it puts him in a position that it seems nobody else considered. Guilliman has by far the largest remaining legion. He has the most Space Marines under his command of anyone, bar none, loyalist or traitor, ostensibly. So as Rogaldorn rebuilds the Imperial Fists, as Vulcan rebuilds the Salamanders, and as the Khan rebuilds the White Scars, etc., etc., they're going to be replacing their fallen troops with something lesser. While still transhuman and by far stronger than any baseline human could ever possibly achieve, they aren't the equals of their forebears, in any sense of the word. Let's check out the revelation of this extreme situation in Ashes of the Imperium. The hall had been divided into many chambers, all ruthless and relentlessly scanned by servo skulls and remote pictor drones. Aspirants were being drilled by Legion serfs. All were male children, none more than 11 or 12 standard years old. Some might have been taken from Terra, but others had physiques and pigmentation suggesting other worlds. Ones plundered by the Imperium as it retreated in haste across the galaxy. They all wore training jerkins, revealing scars from both fighting and surgery. Most had already had their first set of organ implants. As a result, their bodies were oddly proportioned, with rapid muscle growth over skeletons yet to adjust. The movements in the sparring chambers were clumsy, ill-aimed, but nonetheless far more powerful and more rapid than any non-adjusted human would have been capable of. They were learning, rapidly, painfully, to make use of what they had been given. In a few more years, with more procedures and longer training, they would be formidable. It couldn't take as long as it used to. The thirst for soldiers was relentless. What do you think came a metallic voice from near the end of the span. Arcamus looked up, then walked on, drawing closer to the owner of the voice, who waited for him at the far end of the bridge. Like all tech priests, particularly senior ones, Jessica Ervo was a tight fusion of biological and mechanical. Her jet black skin spidered with silver and bronze, her eyes pupilless and iron gray, her hands replaced with precision instruments. She had been bound to the Legion for many decades, most of which had been spent on the Phalanx as Magus Residentia. The reconstruction work was under her supervision, as were many other aspects of the station's operation now. "What success rate are you achieving?" he asked. 20% survival, current and predicted," she replied. "It would be higher, but your master demands speed." "For good reason." "Understood. Come, look at this." He followed her through a pair of large doors and into a collection of smaller chambers. These were arranged facing into a central corridor, with the near wall fully transparent. Overhead lumens cast a severe light across tiled, pristine surfaces. Every chamber was occupied by a single aspirant, and these were wired up to thrones of complex construction, their limbs threaded with intravenous lines, their faces hidden behind iron masks. Servitors attended them, limping between bundles of cabling attached to clattering machines. Some of the aspirants were limp in their bonds, while others were struggling. A few were rigid with what looked like either terror or anger, their exposed flesh sheened with sweat. "I do not recognize this," Arcamus said. "You wouldn't. This is new, experimental. We've had refugees from Luna here, as well as biotechnicians from the palace. Some of the tech here is very old. Some of it sanctioned during the siege. We were still working to achieve optimal results." Arcamus halted, studying the contents of one of the cells. The aspirant was shivering in his bonds, his every muscle taut, his knuckles and wrists bloody. The iron mask that was clamped across his face, enclosing his ears and nose as well as his eyes, was clicking and chattering, clearly feeding material in a constant stream down a range of sensory links. The aspirant's mouth, just visible amid the spiked and valve-encrusted metalwork, was pulled back into an animalistic snarl, and saliva ran down his chin. He looked like he was trying to fight his way out of the shackles, to destroy it all and then launch into a rampage across the entire station. All the while, Legion serfs monitored banks of picture lenses displaying vital signs and neural scans, marking down the results and conferring in hushed tones. His mask-stifled bellows were amplified through chained vox emitters, where menials diligently recorded their frenzied quality and timbre. "Psycho-conditioning," said Ervo, standing beside Arcamus and looking on with undisguised interest. "A little more involved than the hypnotic work you would have undergone. You were given certain traits at a subconscious level. Augmentation of your existing propensity for violence, further reduction of your already degraded fear response. All your brothers underwent the same procedures, and it made a difference, but back then we were not expected to counter that which we knew nothing of." Ervo gave a cynical smile. "Now we know all about it. What can happen to legionaries whose minds are open? So your new brothers will have a narrower range of emotional responses. They will respond viscerally to certain cues, ones we have isolated after studying the methods and appearance of the enemy over the course of the war. They will recoil from these things as if burned by them. They will find it painful to even entertain the idea of such concepts existing. Their hatred, always quick to kindle, will in these circumstances be rapid and unquenchable." Arcamus watched the process unfold, feeling a deep sense of unease. He had a genetic kinship with the aspirant currently undergoing the trial, one that would become profound once the man's transformation was complete. Much of his own training had been brutal, of course, with plenty of psychological work accompanying the physical changes, but this was far more strenuous. This was a dismantling, a deep reworking of ancient species instincts. "It will change them," he murmured. Ervo nodded. "Profoundly. They will be less able across the full spectrum of capabilities. They will be slower to laugh. They will struggle to comprehend the ways of those they are charged to protect. But they will be just as deadly as you ever were, maybe more so, and harder to turn from their course. Lord Dorn is in agreement with this program? Full agreement, as is his brother. It has the highest priority. Arcamus turned away, started to walk again, dispiriting nonetheless. Ervo came with him. Undoubtedly, the war has birthed many hateful things, but it cannot be allowed to happen again. That was true. Even now, after recovering from the worst of his sickness, he would every so often find himself struck by what had just happened, what had torn everything apart, and find himself dumbfounded. How could it possibly have collapsed so quickly? They had been fighting for so long that such questions had barely been considered. Now, evidently, minds were turning to autopsy. That had to happen. But you didn't come here to witness our training improvements, said Ervo. Improvements? No, I did not. I bring word from Lord Dorn. A priority requisition, 21 fast attack system runners, sub-warp, to be fitted and loaded for dispatch within 48 hours. So, we see Guilliman, the ultimate statesman, put his brothers all in a position where he's able to overcome them if and when he ever needs to, and or simply chooses to do so. He has the real deal, the full-on Adeptus Astartes as the Emperor created, sons conceived of his own gene seed, and the legionnaires from the Lost Legions who were subsumed by the Ultramarines within their ranks as well. Roboute, after the nerfing goes into full effect, will have both the strongest troops and the most troops by far. This is the kind of position that the 13th Primarch would greatly benefit from being in. At this point, when the Imperium is still in ashes, literally ankle deep across most of Terra basically, Guilliman isn't quick to trust anyone. He's questioning his own nature, and the nature of the Primarchs in general. It's crossing all their minds what Horus had been and what he became, and they're all wondering if it could happen to them. Even Guilliman, as consummate a politician as he is wondering how Horus, the best of the best, ostensibly, fell to chaos and became what he did. The power of the Council on Terra is under Guilliman's and the Silent Sisters' secret control. Guilliman knows the state of the Emperor. He's basically a dead battery. The throne is described as a vampiric, thirsting black hole that only takes and gives nothing in return. And the Emperor is in a comatose state of undeath, or as I've postulated in other videos, simply dead. Guilliman alone knows that they're pulling psychers in from all over the Imperium and feeding them to the throne in a vain attempt to heal the Emperor. But he also knows this isn't working. It will never work, that the throne is a liability as much as an asset, maybe more so. He knows all of this and holds these secrets from his brothers. Hassan, the protege of Malkador the Sigillite, Malkador the hero, upon trying to retrieve the ashes of his fallen master, finds his way to the throne room and cannot get close due to the radiation. He sees that the Mechanicum and the Custodes toil endlessly to try to duct tape the throne back together, in a desperate attempt to try to get the thing to stabilize and work. They're adding piping and ducting and constantly tinkering with it, and it is growing. Already massive, the alien device is getting that much bigger. But off in the distance, he gets a glimpse of the real Emperor, and he's suspended basically inside two black hemispheres, unmoving, and there's an absolutely abhorrent vibe just rolling off him. He's described as being just a total wrongness, basically, an abominable, cosmic horror that should not and cannot exist, yet somehow it does. Just crazy to see him portrayed like that. Hassan is set up later in the book to be the wild card in play that Guilliman didn't see coming, and we'll have to wait for later books in the Scouring series to see, but he may just be what keeps the Lord of Ultramar in check. The power of the Imperium is stagnant, and its greatest defenders are severely weakened. The next wave of Space Marines are ordained by the Imperial Regent to be made lesser, and the legions are disbanded. Guilliman really is sly and so devious it would make Alfarius proud. I like seeing this side of Roboute. The last 3 novels I read, he was just a total shithead, and I love that, as I am so sick of the whole Boy Scout thing, and it got old a long time ago. And about that comment earlier, toilet smurfs, well, everyone has been calling them smurfs for years, and they have a toilet seat for their heraldry. Don't tell me that is a U for Ultra. The Imperium uses Gothic, not English, and they should be spelling Ultramarines with a V-shaped character, not a U, if Gothic really is just a copy-paste of Latin, which doesn't seem to be sometimes, and other times they just roll with it. Whatever. Either way, I can't unsee it, and really think they need to change their chapter symbol. They'll always be toilet smurfs to me now, and that's a funny way to look at the strongest remaining loyalist force in the galaxy.